My father tried forcing me to hand over my home to support his pregnant golden child stepsister, but I refused, exposed their secrets, and watched their perfect world collapse. My miserly, self-absorbed, and mostly absent father, 62, recently discovered how much I earn and, shockingly, decided to kick me out of my own home, all in the name of family. My stepsister, Ash, 29, Daddy's perfect little gem who supposedly never does anything wrong, has magically gotten pregnant, and with her ambitious goals of being an escort and an OnlyFans model, she can't seem to find a place to live. Now my father wants to fix everything, and apparently I'm the solution. Unfortunately, that means I'm expected to give up my house and the money I worked so hard for, just to support her after she made all the wrong choices. This is the same man who rejected me as his responsibility countless times, but ever since he learned about my new home, career, and surprising income, he's suddenly gotten sentimental about us sharing blood. I'm not thrilled about his constant reminders that he's my father, nor about his attempts to push me closer to his wife and her daughter. Granted, Ash is technically my half-sister, but I was cast aside so early that I never built any bond with her mother, and honestly, I'm glad, because I'd only be disappointed now. Before anyone jumps in, I'll just say I'm here to vent. These are my opinions, thoughts, and feelings. You might not agree, and that's fine, but I don't really have anyone else to talk to, so let me introduce Ash, short for Ashlyn, my half-sister. She's about 5 years younger than me, and somehow, she makes our father proud, literally. But he's delusional, because she's done nothing but live recklessly, working as an escort, sleeping around, and running a flop of an OnlyFans account. Yet my father still calls her his pride. You read that right. Clearly he doesn't know the full story. And who's going to tell him? Now, I'm not overly conservative, but I do have my morals and priorities. I focus on my career and relationships when I have the time. I date women with the hope of forming a real connection. Sometimes there's a spark, but other times it doesn't work out, whether due to distance, availability, or just incompatibility. I don't sleep around casually. I prefer to wait for the right person. Honestly, high body counts gross me out. I'll never understand why some guys brag about it like it's a trophy. It's disgusting. Anyway, those are my values. Sadly, my stepsister lives the opposite way. She's probably lost count of how many partners she's had. Working as an escort disgusts me not only because of the lifestyle, but also because of the danger involved. Plenty of men take things too far in those situations. On top of that, she uploads explicit photos and videos online for money, though with little success. She doesn't seem to know how to drive traffic, and her content is pretty much a flop. How do I know? Here's the embarrassing story. One of my friends told me she texted him after they had drinks and asked if he wanted to have fun. I was furious when I heard, but he swore he didn't know she was my sister at the time. He even showed me the link she sent to her page. She's always broke, always begging Dad for money, which tells me it isn't going well for her. I could never bring myself to confront her directly, and I certainly never told Dad. Once, I even saw her in a car with an older man who gave her flowers before they drove off together. Later, she snuck back into the house through the window in the early morning hours. I noticed this back when I came home from college during breaks. I don't know if she still does it, and honestly, I don't care. I want nothing to do with it. I've worked hard to earn respect in my career, and I'm proud of that. I never really lived with my dad's new family anyway, since he was always quick to send me away whenever he had the chance. Still, I've seen enough of Ash to know she takes after her mother, Marissa, 58. Marissa carried herself like she was an icon in her prime. She used to be a flight attendant, attractive to womanizing men like my dad, and she clearly believed she was untouchable back then. Dad's wife is now the typical botched-face Karen, if you know what I mean. With her claw-like hands and nails longer than her lipstick, she somehow manages the neighborhood daycare. Honestly, it's strange that parents would leave their kids with someone like Edward Scissorhands. One wrong move and she could poke out a child's eye. Just like those nails, she's sharp and pokey in personality too, always ready with an opinion and always stirring up drama in other people's lives. Her voice grates on the ears, and she's got more plastic in her body than the ocean. She's about as real as fake leather. She's also one of the biggest reasons my father is the way he is. She influences him in all the worst ways. I believe she played a major role in his decision to send me to boarding school at the age of 8, simply because she didn't want to raise a child that wasn't hers. Now let me tell you about my father. He's the root of most of these problems. In his mind, whatever he does is automatically justified because he's lived life and supposedly knows better. He even told me once that he regretted having me because I'm nothing like him. Thank God for that. My mother, on the other hand, was a strong, grounded woman. She knew her priorities and took care of him, even though he didn't deserve her. She used to tell me he wasn't a bad man, just a different one, and that no matter what happened, he would always be my father, and I shouldn't forget that. She had a good soul, and never wanted to poison my mind against him, even though I'm sure he made her as miserable as he does everyone else today. They separated and divorced when I was 4. Just 2 months later, my dad married Marissa. By the time I turned 5, they had Ash. Not long after, my mom died in a car crash. That's something I'll never forget. She was supposed to pick me up from school. She was always on time, but that day she was just 10 minutes late. To me, it felt like hours. She was hit at an intersection by a drunk driver. He survived, and she didn't. He ended up with a DUI years later, but that didn't matter. My mom was gone. I was left alone forever. I remember sitting at school, waiting for her. It took 2 hours before anyone came for me. When my father arrived, instead of comfort, I got confusion and lies. His face was filled with annoyance as he glanced at Marissa and asked, "What are we supposed to do about him?" Her cold reply, "Your kid, your problem." And that's exactly how they treated me. That memory has stuck with me ever since. So now, Dad, don't you dare come telling me that I have to take care of your spoiled daughter. I've worked hard for everything I have. I hold a stable job, manage a few small businesses on the side, and have been hustling since I was 15. Boarding school forced independence on me, and I've basically been on my own since 8. After that, I went to college, and only ever visited during holidays. Every step I've taken has been my own effort. Recently, I finally bought myself a house. A real milestone for me. It's a cozy place, miles better than the cramped apartment I shared with friends. Honestly, it was a dream I never thought I'd achieve. Even though I don't care much for my family, I still had enough basic decency to invite them to my housewarming. But my father's reaction? Sad, to say the least. He looked envious, a little bitter, asking about the furniture, the design, and the layout. I gave him some simple answers, and he shot back with sarcastic comments like, "I wouldn't know. You never bothered to tell me." He seemed desperate for attention, exposing just how fragile our relationship was in front of my friends, co-workers, and even my boss. A week later, he called me at work saying he needed to meet urgently. I was buried in a big project but agreed. When I got home, I found an angry Marissa and Ash, her eyes swollen and red, glaring at me from the living room. My dad was in the kitchen, pulling beers from the fridge. He offered me one. I declined, nervous about what was coming. I asked what this was all about, and he raised his brows, responding with a question of his own. "Have you finally started caring about us?" I frowned, completely confused. What was he even talking about? He told me to sit with Marissa and Ash in the living room. I nodded, walked over, and sat across from them. Ash crossed her arms and Marissa rolled her eyes. Dad strolled in, sat beside them, set his beer on the table, and leaned back. Then he asked me if I was. He looked straight at me and asked if I was blind. There was a pause, confusion on my end and anger on theirs. Before I could respond, he added that either I was blind or I was choosing not to see the things that mattered. He said I'd grown arrogant ever since I bought a house, ignoring the people who supposedly meant something to me. I sighed and asked him to explain, to be more clear. He blew out a sarcastic laugh and told me I was unbothered by the seriousness of the situation. According to him, I was ignoring the fact that the family was in jeopardy and had decided not to help. Obviously, I asked what jeopardy he was talking about. He looked over at Ash, who rolled her eyes and announced she was pregnant. Like any normal person, I was about to congratulate her, but before I could, she started crying. Marissa hugged her tightly and told me I should care more about what goes on at home. Dad jumped in, saying Ash just found out she was expecting and that the guy responsible had already dumped her because of it. Marissa added that Ash had decided to keep the baby, and that was what we should base further decisions on. All I could manage to ask was, "Can she afford it?" That earned me death stares from both of them. Honestly, I didn't mean it harshly. I was genuinely concerned. In my head, I assumed they wanted me to contribute financially, and I was ready to help with some money. But then Dad walked over, sat down beside me and said that's why he had called me. He claimed he was a good father to his girl, and that maybe my mother never taught me how to be a good brother. But brothers should be willing to give their lives for their sister's comfort. Excuse me? I know they wanted financial help, but dying for her? Absolutely not. I sighed and asked him directly what he wanted me to do. He smiled, patted my back, and said, "That's my good boy." I forced a fake smile, which vanished the moment he spoke his next words. "You're giving your house to Ashlyn." "No, I'm not," I said instantly. "Yes, you are," he shot back, frowning. He asked why not, and I told him I was willing to help with some money, but the house was mine. I even offered to let her stay in a room rent-free until she could manage on her own. But Dad stood up shouting, "Nonsense!" He insisted I not only give her the house but also move out and buy another for myself. I argued that Ash couldn't even afford the bills or manage a house while being pregnant and unemployed. His response? That those would also be my responsibilities. Excuse me? Hell, no. I was furious, but I forced myself to remain respectful. I stood, told him that wasn't going to happen, and said I was leaving. Then I walked out, but he didn't stop there. A week later, while I was at work, he showed up at my place. I still don't know how he got in or where he got the keys from. When I returned home, I saw movers carrying boxes outside, boxes filled with my things. I rushed over and demanded to know what they were doing. They told me the homeowner had ordered them to throw my stuff out. I nearly exploded. I shouted that I was the owner of the house and told them to put everything back inside immediately. Inside, I found Dad and Ash, both standing there and demanding that I act like a brother. I told them to leave, but they refused, so I threatened to call the police. Only then did they finally storm out, cursing me and throwing insults as they left. Now, I know this is a lot to take in, but believe me, it was even worse to live through. A week has passed, and I can't shake the guilt. Was I wrong? Part of me feels they need me, and that maybe I shouldn't cut them off so harshly. But another part of me knows there are limits. It infuriates me how disconnected and careless they were with me growing up, and now they expect me to sacrifice everything for them. That's asking way too much, don't you think? What do you all think? I can't even bring this up with my friends. You all are the only people I have right now. Update. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been a week since I posted, and honestly, I didn't expect it to get the attention it did. I read through the comments, and many of them made me question a lot. In the end, I decided not to completely cut my family off. This was mostly because I received a call from Ash. She wanted to meet. I agreed, though she asked to meet at my house. Since I was still recovering from what happened last time, I insisted we meet somewhere else. We ended up at a coffee shop. She seemed uneasy at first. Normally she's arrogant and sharp, but this time she looked unlike herself. We sat in a corner, and she started telling me about her breakup. I said I already knew, since Dad told me the guy left her after finding out she was pregnant. But she shook her head and said that wasn't the full truth. According to her, Dad thinks her boyfriend left because he had commitment issues, but in reality, she was the one with those issues. Shocking, right? She explained that she did really care about him, but just a few days before she broke the pregnancy news, he had discovered some things about her. He came wanting to confront her, but she blurted out first, and it set him off. He punched a hole in the wall, terrified her, and then told her it was over. Since then, she's been trying to call him, but he won't answer. The only time he texted back, he said she needed to get rid of the baby first. Only then would he talk to her again. Now, Ash isn't exactly innocent, but that text made me dislike this guy instantly. I asked her what he had found out, but she said it would be weird telling a brother. I figured it must have been about her OnlyFans or escort work, so I didn't push. I was about to ask her why she really wanted to meet when she took a deep breath and admitted she had been involved in shady things. I braced myself because I didn't really want confirmation of what I'd suspected, but I let her talk. She said she had once wanted to paint and become an artist, but Marissa told her it wouldn't make money or provide a good life. Instead, her mother pushed her to find a man quickly. When Ash started attracting the attention of older men, she was disgusted, but Marissa told her that was a good thing, that older men were the ones with money and stability. Ash was only 19 at the time. Marissa convinced her that college wouldn't give her the kind of comfortable life she wanted, but her youth would. Ash decided to try modeling instead. She went to several agencies, but none seemed interested. Then she met a man in his 40s who promised her opportunities. He took her to parties, bought her expensive clothes and jewelry, and made her feel like she was on the right path. But soon she learned what the opportunities really were. Her first supposed gig was selling her time to another man. She thought it was just dinner. It turned into an overnight arrangement. In exchange, she got a small modeling job taking photos for a local brand. That was it. It didn't stop there. A few more men used her, each time dangling the promise of gigs that never came. Eventually, she found out the man who was investing in her was actually selling her out and profiting from her. She wanted to confront him but feared he might retaliate, maybe even have her killed. So instead, she told him she no longer wanted to pursue modeling and was fine working minimum wage jobs. To her relief, he let her go. After that, she tried waiting tables at bars. It was tough work, but at least it was honest. That, she said, was what real hard-earned money felt like. Ash admitted she'd tried regular jobs after leaving the modeling scam, but Marissa constantly humiliated her for it. Marissa would say things like, "Women are the beauty of this world. They should shine and smile like ornaments, not waste themselves working." According to her, women needed to be taken care of, not struggle. So Ash shifted back into dating men for dinner and charging them. She said a lot of lonely guys just wanted conversation, but that too quickly turned dangerous. Stalkers, obsessive men, ones who thought they were owed more than what they paid for. Eventually, she decided talking to men was riskier than sleeping with them. That's when she fully leaned into escorting. For a while, escorting worked. Then a friend suggested she try OnlyFans. She gave it a shot, but it didn't take off. She wasn't good with cameras or editing, and she wasn't social enough to promote herself. It required effort she couldn't manage, so it flopped. Later, she reconnected with her boyfriend, an old co-worker from a coffee shop. She really liked him, but he was clingy and possessive. And he had reasons to be, because during that time she was still escorting and on OnlyFans without his knowledge. Eventually, she quit both, and he started supporting her with what little money he made. She was okay with that. Marissa wasn't. Then came the pregnancy, and when her boyfriend found out about her past, he walked away. Ash confessed she has a handful of men who could all be potential fathers. Some of them still give her money to support the baby, each one thinking he's the only one. One of them even proposed to her. She knows it's ridiculous. They all know she's an escort, but she never outright confirms it. Still, they pay her bills and would probably help raise the kid. She said she shared all this with me because she couldn't tell Dad. He still believes she's just been scraping by with modeling gigs, and that she only had one man who wronged her. Marissa knows more of the truth and is urging her to marry the man who proposed, letting him believe he's the father. Ash, however, doesn't want that. He's older, strange, and she doesn't want to live a lie. I asked her what she wanted from me. She said she needed some financial help and wanted me to reconcile with Dad. According to her, I should agree to what Dad was asking, give up my house for her, and move out temporarily. Then, once things cooled down, I could come back. How is that even a solution? I respectfully declined, told her I'd help with some cash, but I wasn't moving out of my own house. That's when she snapped, called me selfish, said she had exposed her entire life to me, and I didn't have the decency to help. She claimed Dad was right, that I should have been dumped in an orphanage instead of being taken in. Then she stormed out. I don't think my response was extreme, but it's making me wonder, am I selfish? Does her story justify her demands? Should I trust her? I felt like she was being honest, but does that mean I should do what she's asking? Update. This has been gnawing at me, so here's another update after a week. A few things happened. After I met Ash, Dad called and asked to meet at a bar to settle things. Curious, I went. We sat at the counter, and the first thing he said was that he knew exactly how much I earned. I asked why that mattered, and he said it meant I could easily afford another house in a few years. I shrugged and told him I already had a house and that this discussion needed to end. He insisted I didn't have a family yet, while Ash did, and that it's harder for women to raise a child alone. According to him, the baby needed a safe home, so I reminded him Ash already lives with him and Marissa. If they've been fine with her all this time, then a baby wouldn't change much. I asked Dad what sense it made for Ash to live alone in a whole house while pregnant. I told him she needed people around her who could actually care for her. That's when he shocked me again. He said he and Marissa would move in with Ash, in my house. I couldn't believe my ears. Before I could even react, the bartender let out a sarcastic chuckle. Dad noticed and immediately took offense, asking him what was so funny. The bartender, Ash's ex, looked straight at him and said, "She uses everyone and then throws them away." My dad stiffened and asked if he knew who he was talking about. The guy nodded and said he was Ash's boyfriend. My eyes widened, so this was him. Dad clenched his fists and demanded to know why he thought it was okay to start a family he couldn't support. The guy just raised his hands and said he wasn't responsible for a family that wasn't his, and he had no interest in raising a child that wasn't his own. Dad pressed him further, and the man calmly explained he'd had a vasectomy last year because he never wanted kids. Yet somehow Ash was pregnant. On top of that, he'd caught her sneaking off with different men, lying about where she was going, and later discovered her OnlyFans. He said he didn't want to believe it at first, but when Ash told him about the baby, that was the final confirmation. She had been cheating all along and he knew it. That's when she admitted everything. I sat there watching my father's face twist from rage to disbelief to shame, while the bartender spoke steadily. He shrugged and said Ash owed him honesty, time, love, not the other way around. He said no father should ever be proud of a daughter like that. Dad tightened his lips, stood up without a word, and walked out. Later that evening, he texted me that he had to pick Marissa up from her yoga class. I don't know what went down afterward, but I'm certain something did, because the very next day Ash showed up at my door crying. She accused me of ruining everything. I pulled her inside to avoid a scene and calmed her down, telling her I hadn't said a word. It was her boyfriend, who just happened to be the bartender where Dad and I met. That's when she broke down further and said Dad told her to quit everything and stay at home. He said he was disgusted, never thought she'd stoop so low, and demanded she change her ways and find a decent man. But he also told her chances were slim now. I hugged her and reassured her. She apologized for accusing me, saying it was because Dad had confronted her right after he came back from seeing me. I forgave her, and she went home. But while she was venting, she mentioned something odd, how pathetic she felt when Dad lectured about loyalty and good women, and how Marissa sat quietly like she couldn't speak. Ash said, "One of the things she can't talk about." I asked what she meant, and Ash just muttered, "Because she's yoga." I frowned, not understanding, but she didn't elaborate. Yoga stuck with me though. What do you all think that meant? Will Ash still be Dad's pride after this? No one's contacted me since, but I'll keep you posted. Update, just 2 days later, and here I am again. For those asking, Ash's ex's name doesn't matter. Let's just call him Bob. So the day before yesterday, I went to meet Dad. I told him I'd made some decisions. I said I wanted to help raise Ash's child, that I was willing to let her stay in one of my rooms, and I'd cover baby supplies like diapers. But she needed to get a job as soon as possible. Dad said that with a baby, working wouldn't be possible. I suggested freelancing or something she could do from home. This time, Dad wasn't his usual hostile self. He paused, sighed, and sat down on the couch. Then he said he thought I hated him. He was right, but I asked him why he believed that. He said it was when Dad said the reason I hated him was because Mom hated him too. I shut that down quickly. I told him she never once said that. She always told me Dad loved me and cared about me. The only reason I ever felt disappointment was because what Mom said and what I actually felt from him were worlds apart. She gave me the picture of a father who cared, but what I experienced was neglect and indifference. Dad rubbed his eyes, saying he hated himself for a lot of things. He admitted he liked Mom, but they didn't know each other long enough to figure out if they were really meant for each other. Then he sighed and confessed, Mom got pregnant, and that's why he married her. She was a good wife, but he never felt that spark. Then he met Marissa. My insides twisted hearing him say it. He claimed Marissa ignited a flame in him he'd never felt before. He fell for her, and before he knew it, she was pregnant. He admitted he told her it was wrong, but it was too late. He planned to tell Mom first, but Marissa, feeling insecure, went straight to her and spilled everything. Mom confronted him, and he admitted it all. She was deeply hurt, but even then she stayed polite and simply asked for a divorce. That was the truth. My parents divorced because Dad cheated on my mom with Marissa and got her pregnant. He paused, looked me in the eye and said he spent a good year with Marissa until Mom died, and he had to bring me back. Marissa hated it. She was terrified Dad might put me above their baby out of guilt. So 3 years later, Dad sent me to boarding school and kept me away to avoid discomfort for Marissa. Then he added, "Love makes you do stupid things." I wanted to punch him right then, but I held back. At that moment, Marissa appeared in the doorway holding a water bottle. She casually said she was off to yoga, set the bottle down, went into the kitchen, then re-emerged and headed out. I blinked, numb. When I followed her outside, she was already in her car driving off. I picked up the bottle she'd left behind, intending to return it, but she was gone. I got in my car and followed her. She parked outside a yoga studio, but instead of going in, she looked around nervously, then slipped into another car waiting in an alley. She hugged and kissed the driver, and they drove off together. My jaw clenched as I pulled over. I went inside the yoga studio and asked about Marissa, worried. The staff told me they had no member by her name. I returned to my car and waited. When their car came back, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I filmed the man opening her door, hugging her, kissing her, even slapping her butt as she walked back toward the lot, all smiles. So much for yoga. I left before she saw me. And there it was. Karma. Dad had cheated on Mom, and now Marissa was cheating on him. He's called me a few times since, but I haven't answered. All I can think about now is confronting Marissa with what I saw. Update. Sorry this is late, but so much went down. I finally gathered the nerve to confront her. I waited until Dad was out and Ash was asleep. I asked Marissa if she had yoga that day. She said she had it every single day, even Sundays. She was in the kitchen making pasta. I asked who her instructor was. She tossed out some random name. I asked if it was a guy, and she laughed, saying, "Of course not. Why would I choose a male instructor?" I told her it was funny she claimed that, when she told me I was mistaken, but her voice gave her away, unsteady, her hands frozen above the pasta sauce. I told her I had joined the same yoga club yesterday and confirmed what I already knew. They had no female instructors. She asked how I even knew which club she went to, and I told her plainly. I followed her the last time I visited. She dropped her spoon. I picked it up and looked her in the eye. When she asked what I was getting at, I told her what I'd seen. She denied it, of course. I repeated myself. I'd seen it with my own eyes. She shrugged and said Dad would never believe me. So I pulled out my phone, played the video, and told her he'd believe his own eyes at least. She froze, speechless for a moment, then calmed down and continued cooking. "It doesn't matter anymore," she said flatly. "I was already planning to divorce him." I was stunned. This woman was vile. My father deserved a lot, sure, but Marissa was something else entirely. She admitted the man she'd been meeting was her lover of 3 years. She said they had fallen in love long ago, but back then he was married to another woman whose father had given him a job in his company. There was too much at stake. He chose to stay married and secure his finances. Marissa, meanwhile, got pregnant and decided to lock my father down instead. She confronted my mother, destroyed their marriage, and forced my dad's hand. Now, she told me, her lover was a widower and a business owner. Perfect timing for her. "Women do what they must for security," she said with a smile. But her grin disappeared instantly. I turned and found Dad standing in the doorway, fists clenched, eyes red, body trembling. He called Ash into the kitchen. When she appeared, he asked her who her real father was. Ash looked at Marissa, shook her head and said she didn't care about blood. "You've always been my dad," she told him. He ran his hands through his hair and began pacing the floor. Within 2 days, Marissa and Ash were told to leave. The divorce is now in process. They're staying in a shelter. Dad has asked me to find him a therapist and has apologized repeatedly. I've forgiven him every time. As for Marissa, her lover won't take her in. He's cut contact and denies any relationship. I have the proof, the video. Marissa has begged me for it, even asked me to think of Ash and her pregnancy. But all I can say is what I've said before. Marissa, your kid, your problem. So now I ask, what should I do? Delete the video or hand it over? I'll update in the comments sometime later. Thanks for being here, for the advice and support. It means a lot.